in 1615. The following year saw the publication of The Chemical Wedding of Christian Rosenkreutz. First composed by a 19-year-old André in 1605, this hermetic novel, published anonymously, was taken as yet another manifesto from the mysterious Rosicrucian fraternity.
The impact of the publication of the Rosicrucian manifestos was the effect of dropping a mystery into the collective mind of an age. It's like dropping a pebble into a pool. The ripples go on, and in this case the impact was so strong that the ripples are still going today. It was, in fact, one of the most brilliant publicity stunts of all time.
For Europe is with child, and will bring forth a strong child. There shall be a door open to Europe when the wall is removed, which already doth begin to appear, and with great desire is expected of many. What before times hath been seen, heard, and smelt, now finally shall be spoken and uttered forth, when the world shall awake out of a heavy and drowsy sleep, and with an open heart, bare head and bare foot, shall merrily and joyfully meet the new arising sun.
The Rosicrucians believed that if you wanted to launch a new age, the best way to do it was to cloak your vision in a legend, a myth, and then to wrap it up in mystery, because a mystery is one of the most effective ways of getting hold of people's attention. We don't know for certain who wrote the Rosicrucian manifestos, but we do know the milieu from which they came, which was a group of people in Tübingen in Germany, surrounding the great Protestant theologian Johann Valentin André. The time we're talking about is the early 17th century, and this group of people looked around them and they decided that what Europe needed was a kind of New Age movement. They had what we would now call a holistic vision, a way of looking at the world that brought together philosophy, science, art, and religion into one unified whole. And they believed that when people began to apply this vision, that a new age would be ushered in.
French philosopher Marin Mersenne got locked into a paper fight over the Rosicrucian Brotherhood with England's Dr. Robert Flood, as dozens of bound tomes and hurried pamphlets flew across Europe for the next 7 years. Some begged admittance to the Fratres RC. Some claimed to know who the Fratres RC were. Others claimed spurious membership. Everyone with an interest in the fraternity, whether for or against, and sometimes both, had their say. Johann Arndt, Count Michael Meyer, Matthias Berniger, Wilhelm Biedenbach, Benedikt Biedemann, Christoph Bismarck, Johann Bringer, Julianus de Campis, Johann Kombach, Johann Faulhaber, François Garras, Friedrich Grieg, Samuel Hafenreffer, Anna Hoyes, Philipp Geiger, Isaac Habrecht, Matthias Höy, Paul Lautensack, Andreas Libavius, Heinrich Nollius, Daniel Mögling, Esaias Stiefel, Gabriel Naudet, Jörg Rost, Paul Nagel, Oleg Worm, Philipp Ziegler, Julius Sperber, Johannes Boreas, Daniel Sennert, Joachim Morsius, Johannes Walch, Simpert Wehr, Nicholas Honnius, Wilhelm Schickard, Paul Felgenhauer, Wolfhard Spangenberg, Abraham Kulstetus. Where some found rare allegorical meaning, others were shocked to reveal the world's first-blown multinational conspiracy story.
Many people were excited by the manifestos and attempted to contact the Rosicrucians. Other people wrote attacking them. Others, in fact, claimed to represent the Brotherhood. The reason why they left no mailing address was, I think, deliberate. What they were saying was, you will have to create this new age for yourselves. We're not going to do it for you. It's a process of inner transformation. And that also is a Gnostic idea.
The stakes could be high for pro-Rosicrucians who were too conspicuous. The printer Wessel's nephew, Philip Hormagius, was tried here by Marburg University in 1620 and incarcerated in a distant castle for his intemperate love of things Rosicrucian. But there was neither faggot nor fire for the Rosicrucians themselves. The otherworldly fratres RC were nowhere to be seen. Ah, thought their enemies, then the infernal brethren must be invisible. In 1620, the 30 Years' War was unleashed on Central Europe, a fight to the death between the Catholic South and the Protestant North. Catholic propagandists accused their enemies of being possessed by Rosicrucian witches. French philosopher René Descartes, who had gone searching for the fratres RC, was himself accused in Catholic Paris of being a Rosicrucian. "How could this be?" responded the founder of the mechanistic philosophy. "All the world knows they are invisible." Even before the war, in the comparative safety of Lutheran Tübingen, André and his friends came under scrutiny. Caspar Bucher, professor of oratory, smelled subversion. In a sense, the bellicose Bucher was right. André's amazing satire, Menipus, published anonymously in 1617, revealed his political acuity. One of its themes was taken from the Paradoxa of Sebastian Frank, and could have been written for Bucher. The learned are perverted. Menipus, named after the cynic philosopher famous for his bitter sarcasm, advocated the full confessional freedom denied by Lutherans, Catholics, and Calvinists. Scanning the Lutheran states of 1617, 100 years after Luther's first famous defiance, André heard an uncritical glee, hoarse with self-congratulation, wallowing in a centenary of freedom. André, himself a Lutheran deacon, declared the excitement of fraud. The true Reformation had hardly even begun. Luther had condemned anyone who didn't agree with him. His followers persecuted those who read Frank, Schwenkfeld, Feigl, and the religious works of Paracelsus, not to mention the pro-Rosicrucians, whose only wish was for a universal science and education within a loving Christian society. Bucher called Menipus an alchemical abortion. "Everyone knows," Bucher wrote in his Anti-Menipus, "this Menipus comes from the circle which used to gather about Tobias Hess." André's friend Hess, dead 3 years, could not reply. Menipus was suppressed in Tübingen. André tried another tack. His Invitatio Fraternitatis Christi invited his readers to join the Fraternity of Christ, undoubtedly an invisible society, since virtually no one could recognize its existence. André warned that the alchemical goal of true Christian discipleship was the practice of sacred love. Very few grasped André's proffered hand, preferring the fantastical fratres RC with their promise of more gold than both the Indies bring to the King of Spain, to the disciplines of alchemical soul cleansing. André dubbed the gamut of mystery-mongers, chiliasts, neometrists, astro-calendar and gold-makers, self-styled initiates, occult obscurantists, apocalyptic new prophets, the little Curiosity brothers, or simply the Curiosi, who obscure rather than reveal the simple truth. In his brilliant playlet, Institutio Magica pro Curiosis, he contrasted the hard-working Christianus with the get-occult enlightenment quick enthusiast Curiosus. In such hands, André doubted if his farmer could accomplish mighty works. This is Comenius, an exception to the rule. In spite of youthful disappointment at the failure of the fratres RC to declare themselves, this great Czech, born in 1592, the founder of the concept of universal education, said of André, "He has given us the torch." Following in nature's footsteps, Comenius's hope in what he called the way of light would go on to inspire lasting educational and social reform in England, Sweden, and Holland. To minds that were already expansive, the farmer opened To minds that were already expansive, the farmer opened them still further, revealing an unclaimed empire of mind in nature and mind over matter. In 1960, historian Hugh Trevor Roper singled out Comenius, together with the Pole Samuel Hartlib and the Scot John Dury, as the real philosophers and the only philosophers of the English Revolution. Their spirit and work, and the persistent image of the Fratres RC, supported the foundation in 1661 of the Royal Society, patronized by Charles II. The Royal Society was an epoch-marking event in the history of knowledge. André, who had died 7 years earlier in 1654, would have enjoyed the Society's open-minded, frank, non-ideological and above all practical approach to following in the footsteps of nature. He would have regretted the growing tendency to materialism. Nevertheless, a Rosicrucian enlightenment, the term is Francis Yates, really had occurred. We have Johann Valentin André to thank for that.
El movimiento Rosacruz era indudablemente un movimiento gnóstico.
The Rosicrucian movement was undoubtedly a Gnostic movement. However, if any of the authors of the Rosicrucian manifestos had been asked if he considered himself a Gnostic, he would have immediately answered that he did not. At that time, the image that people had of Gnostics was practically handed to them by the writings of the opposing side, the one-sided writings of the Fathers of the Church, who had fought Gnostics from the first centuries of Christianity. However, within the Rosicrucian manifestos, there can be found many elements of traditional gnosis, so that the manifestos can be considered a kind of ring in the chain of tradition, which goes from Valentinian gnosis, the gnosis of the 2nd and 3rd centuries after Christ, passing through the Cathars, passing through the alchemists of the Middle Ages, passing through the mysticism of the Middle Ages, the Neoplatonic and Renaissance movement, and, above all, passing through Paracelsus, who, at least in the linguistic field, where the manifestos of the Rosicrucians were born, had given the symbols a new terminology, had given the symbols a new language of traditional gnosis. Therefore, it is not surprising that precisely the man who for the first time in the history of Christianity rehabilitated the Gnostics as one of so many branches of primitive Christianity was Abraham von Frankenberg, a disciple of Jacob Boehme and also an admirer of the Rosicrucian movement. He achieved this in a work in manuscript form in 1627, where, in a piece of writing entitled Theophrastia Valentiniana, he established the identity of the philosophy of Paracelsus, and Jacob Boehme with the theosophy, or philotheosophy as he calls it, of the first Valentinian movement, that is to say, the Gnostics.
Del primer movimiento valentiniano, es decir, de los gnósticos.
This work remained for the time being a manuscript, but it was published 100 years later in one of the historic works, which is a landmark in the historiography of the heretics.
Dentro de la historia de la historiografía de los herejes. Esta historia
This history is The History of Heretics and Churches by Gottfried Arnold, whose first edition appeared in Frankfurt in 1700. Two aspects of Frankenberg's book are curious. In the first place, the identification of Paracelsian Rosicrucian theosophy of Jakob Boehme with Gnosis, and not only these are named in the book. There is also a quotation from Giordano Bruno, reference to Meister Eckhart, reference to Tauler, and above all, and this is important, the Rosicrucian Brotherhood is mentioned twice.
André had begun the process with a joke. The fame of the fraternity was of course nothing of the kind. Those who seek truth for truth's sake are generally invisible to the blind eyes of the world, is how André and his friends would have seen the matter. In his untrumpeted collection of observations and dramatic pieces, Christian Mythologies, published in 1619, André hoped to bring the curtain down on the Rosicrucian furor. By turning the joke on its head. André envisions a scene where a number of his contemporaries, following certain indices, go in search of and eventually discover a secret vault. In an almost sick parody of the farmer, the explorers break down a wall. Torches in hand, they enter the darkness. There they discover a sarcophagus with an inscription upon it, Mea Tempora, my times. With great difficulty, they heave the tomb open. The contents of my times are shocking. Inside the sarcophagus lies a cadaver. Unlike the pure flesh of Christian Rosenkreuz, this body is horribly mutilated, the flesh consumed. After great effort, they succeed in uncovering a beautiful bronze plaque by the cadaver's rotting head. I, the truth, daughter of God, assassinated by the duplicity of Satan, by the corruption of the world, by the feebleness of the flesh, by the despotism of tyranny, by the indolence of the priests, by the malignity of politics, by the superficiality of historians, by the folly of the wise, by the stupidity of the people. I rest here within the mud of the lie. In 100 years, the sun will see me again. Greetings, O posterity. This is the tomb of truth. In a startling image, André has succeeded in condensing his entire outlook and the real substance of the farmer as well. It is perhaps a sign of the perversity of the world that while his Rosenkreuz fantasy is remembered, this devastatingly truthful work lies rotting in obscure libraries. The truth is assassinated. Alas, Britannia was unaware of all this. Her greatest Rosicrucian advocate, the prolific author and Paracelsian doctor Robert Fludd, beginning in 1616, was always an outsider. This position
was, in fact, one of the most brilliant publicity stunts of all time.
For Europe is with child and will bring forth a strong child. There shall be a door open to Europe when the wall is removed, which already doth begin to appear, and with great desire is expected of many. What before times hath been seen, heard and smelt, now finally
In a legend, a myth, and then to wrap it up in mystery, because a mystery is one of the most effective ways of getting hold of people's attention. We don't know for certain who wrote the Rosicrucian manifestos, but we do know the milieu from which they came, which was a group of people in Tübingen in Germany.
In 1615. The following year saw the publication of The Chemical Wedding of Christian Rosenkreuz, first composed by a 19-year-old André in 1605. This hermetic novel, published anonymously, was taken as yet another manifesto from the mysterious Rosicrucian fraternity.
shall be spoken and uttered forth, when the world shall awake out of her heavy and drowsy sleep, and with an open heart, bare head and bare foot, shall merrily and joyfully meet the new arising sun.
The Rosicrucians believed that if you wanted to launch a new age, the best way to do it was to cloak your vision in the impact of the publication of the Rosicrucian manifestos was the effect of dropping a mystery into the collective mind of an age. It's like dropping a pebble into a pool. The ripples go on, and in this case the impact was so strong that the ripples are still going today. It was